Welcome, everyone. We are here today to put personas on trial. Are personas dead? Are they still useful? Yeah, I am Robin Brooks, your co-host. Ryan is joining me today to both prosecute and defend our friends, the personas. Ryan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Ryan Cantwell. I'm a consultant and trainer at the 280 Group, and I couldn't be more excited to be here today to talk about personas and represent both sides of the argument.
Excellent. I am Robin Brooks. I'm Director of Product here at 280 Group, building product management products for product managers. So it's the best job in the world, and I'm happy to have all of you joining us today. Okay, let's tell you just a little bit about 280 Group, and then we'll get into it. So we are an outcome-driven product partner. We work to help product managers and product teams transform, become more productive and more process-driven to deliver outcomes for their customers. And our core values are outcomes over outputs, truth tellers, and we are one team. Please ask questions as we go through the webinar. We're going to keep this engaging. We want this to be an active conversation. We will be presenting you with polls throughout, so you can participate and engage. And one of the biggest questions we get is, can I watch this later? Yes, you will be able to come back and watch it later. You'll be able to share it with colleagues and friends if you would like as well. You'll get access to the recording after the webinar is complete. All right, we have a product management leadership group on LinkedIn. If you are not a member, I highly recommend you join and engage with this active community. We discuss and share best practices, the importance of product management, how to make it more effective, and you can network with your peers.
All right, absolutely. Joining that group is important because we're going to do a little bit of that here, engaging with your peers. So it's going to be fun. Like I said, everybody, I'm really excited for today. As you know, the main topic of today's discussion is personas, a beloved tool in the product management and UX toolkit. And as we go through, I'm hoping to share some insight into where we see personas helping and hurting and how teams kind of use them. And we do that so you can look for those anti-patterns and maybe even level up your game when it comes to certain product management practices. But to get us there, we're using a fun courtroom theme today. We're going to argue for and against the idea that personas are dead. And that's going to hopefully open your mind a little bit so you can form your own opinions and engage with each other. I really want to see an active conversation in the chat and decide which side of the testimony you agree with. So let's have some fun. Hopefully learn a thing or two about developing and using personas. So as we get serious now. We have entered the courtroom of product management, everybody. The courtroom of product management is a very fictional place where we debate topics, we have opinions, and we rethink the way product is practiced in a very safe environment with one another. So let me introduce a few of our key players. Two of us you have met already. Our judge, Mrs. Robin Brooks. The jury is all of you. So you are here and you get to sit the jury for our trial at hand, and representing both the plaintiff and the defense is me. I am the court-appointed lawyer arguing both sides of the case. And in today's proceedings, the plaintiff brings to trial and alleges that personas are dead. The tool, it is a tool of the past, we should say, and they need to be put to rest. The defense, well, they argue that personas are alive and well, and they're very relevant in today's practice of product management and user experience and design. So all of you, being our jury, I ask that you consider the case at hand. And we'll have a few instructions for you to do that. Number one, know the rules. The first rule is we're looking at the tool persona profiles as an artifact. And we're asking the question of them, is this extinct? Is it dead? And you will be presented with evidence from both sides of the argument to make your judgment. So I should say, make your judgment based upon the facts that you are presented. But please, unlike a real court case, share your opinions as we go along. That's going to be important. I'd love to see you engaging with one another. And finally, collaborate. That's where that engagement comes in. So you can share those ideas that you have, or maybe a bit of evidence you want to submit yourself. And by the end, you need to pick a side. We're going to ask you which side do you agree with or disagree with. Now, your responsibility as jurors is to evaluate the testimony, consider all of the evidence presented, and then definitely have an opinion. And as a reminder, the accusation, personas, the tool, are dead. So here we go. It's the formal swearing in ceremony for all of you. So everybody raise your right hands to be sworn in for the case. You will well and truly try the matter in issue. That's what we're here to do. You will render a true verdict according to the evidence that is presented. And you will make a true deliverance between the court of product management and the defendant in this particular case. So there we go. You are all officially jurors in the trial of personas. So now that you're sworn in, it's time that we have a question for you. So we'll open our first poll, everybody. And I want to hear, what's your experience with personas? All right, we see lots of responses rolling in. Got a pretty good spectrum at that.
Yeah.
All right, we'll maybe take another 15 to 20 seconds or so and let others provide their answer.
Okay, looks like we have a quorum.
Yeah, I think so. All right, we'll go ahead and share these results. Let's see what we have. All right, everybody. The winner of this particular poll is, I can be described as an occasional user of personas. Something you're familiar with, something you use in certain instances, perhaps, but it's not something that's maybe become a habit, or you're using regularly, or you're just simply not using them at all, even though we have a couple of those here, and that's okay. We're going to learn where they can help, and even if you are using them, maybe where they don't help so well. So this is good. We generally have some level of familiarity with the approach. So now I want you to take those experiences that you have and see how they apply to the evidence that is being presented here in the court of product management against personas. So well done, everybody. All right, so now let's move on to our opening remarks. We're going to look, kind of see where this trial is going, and then we'll start to get into the testimonies from both sides of the argument. All right, so here in the courtroom is me, the plaintiff, accusing persona profiles as being dead on the grounds that their useful life is over and it's time they went extinct, because they are often misused and new tools easily replace them and may be more effective. On the other side, we have the defense, also me, that argues that personas don't have a shelf life and they remain relevant even today. They also have benefits that are irreplaceable, and new tools may get close to doing similar things, but nothing beats personas when we need to empathize with our customers overall. So here we go. So now we turn it over and we let the lawyers do their jobs. So now I get to do this.
Right.
Here we
go. Plaintiff, you may make your opening remarks.
Thank you, Judge. I'm Ryan P. Cantwell now, the plaintiff. See what I did there? All right, and I accuse personas of being dead and gone, and I have some evidence to present. So first, consider Exhibit A from the plaintiff. Let's look at a particular situation here. An ambitious product manager, they've learned about personas, and they think this tool can help their organization. So they take the next steps, they create one, and here we see Mary Manager, they've created this one. And they started by finding a great looking template online. They fill it in, they admire it, and they put it in a shared location for their teams to access. The product manager in this case feels really good that they created a persona. They're excited. It looks great. And kind of the work that went into it and the design kind of focus made them a little bit blind to some fundamental flaws with this persona. They accidentally built a persona that opens the door to judgment. Yes, we're in court. There is judgment. Judgment can happen. And what is that judgment? Personas are meant to eliminate judgment, not create it. The examples here are use of words that kind of carry preconceived notions or bias, such as they're a millennial or no, they're a techie. Those things, people have an understanding, a mind's eye picture of what it means to be those things or what behaviors those things exhibit. So we're allowing the reader or the stakeholder or user, in this case, of the persona, to make their own, kind of paint their own picture of who that persona is. We don't want to do that. And sometimes the brand, like we put, favorite brands and things like that, I see that as a little superfluous. It's not relevant, in other words, to the product that you offer. And if you can say it's not relevant, why put it there? Because people think, well, users of this is what I think about them. And that's not the point. We want to know what the persona and who they are and how they feel about the problem at hand. Second, our persona may even lack context and not even tell a story about our user. It's simply missing the why. The why behind the persona, which is the point of a persona in the first place. So that missing context or why, it's not, the information is needed to show people where our users are struggling so we can effectively address those struggles and help them. But if only, like we've seen the Mary Manager profile, that it's the obvious or surface level information. Again, people are going to make up their own stories. They're going to kind of put themselves and make them a proxy for that user. We need to ask, why is Mary completing those tasks that we see or we list in our persona? What makes it so hard for her to do the things that, and what gets in the way and causes her pain? So as we consider Exhibit A, think about times that you have seen these behaviors happen. Personas were created and they opened the door to judgment in very unintended ways. Or they don't tell a meaningful enough story to serve the right purpose. Why are we using this persona in the first place? We got to measure that impact. Or is it having the effect that we want? And finally, how about a situation where we create some personas, everyone high fives and says, hooray, we have personas, without ever asking about that impact. Are they doing the thing that we want them to do? And for this reason, I say personas are dead. Now, let's look at Exhibit B. Exhibit B, personas should follow 3 simple steps, in my opinion. The first is to create the persona. And that's where product managers and UX designers and researchers, we build these things because it's our way of articulating our assumptions and putting it on paper that we have about our customers. It's our starting place. And at the 280 group, we call that a proto persona. It's a prototype persona. It's something that we can then go check. And speaking of checking, that's what we do next. We go validate it. So once you have your assumptions on paper after creating it, you need to go make sure that it's what I believe to be true, in fact, true. And think about a scenario where personas are created, never validated, and then used to direct design and communications in your organization. And I gotta tell you, this happens all the time because we run into situations where leaders, they say, oh, we don't have time to do research. We got to move on with the project. Or product managers get caught up in the hustle of deadlines and mounting pressures that pulls focus away from research and into other areas. And all we do by not validating our persona is fuel our product design and our marketing communications with assumptions. And the result is products our customers don't want. And we send communications that fail to resonate. It's a cascading effect of misaligned expectations and miscommunication because we based everything upon assumptions. Now, finally, we've got the last piece of the puzzle, which is we need to use them. Much like validation, personas are frequently created, maybe even validated, and then never used. They put on a shelf and left there. The goal of a persona is to bring our stakeholders closer to the customer and their problems and get us to empathize with them. And personas give stakeholders the ability to empathize. That's what we want, right? And hopefully inject some imagination as we consider how do we help them. And I see this trap too often. Personas are placed, and I'm going to call it the black hole of SharePoint, and never opened again. Where product managers, we don't have healthy persona habits. We review them regularly, maybe not. We just create them and we stick them away instead of reviewing them. Maybe we're not updating them regularly enough with the latest learning and they feel old and stale, and that's why we don't use them. Or we don't take the necessary steps to make them common vocabulary or regularly used among the stakeholders in our organization. And for that reason, I say personas are dead. They're rarely validated and they're rarely used. So why use them if we're not going to make sure they're right and use them in the first place? All right, our final piece of evidence from the plaintiff, Exhibit C. The evidence shows there are better alternatives to personas, and personas are not a one-size-fits-all tool. That means other tools out there are better. So the first tool that I can say replaces personas is an empathy map. If a persona is how I get my stakeholders to empathize with customers, an empathy map does the same job, but with less work. I don't need a fancy design template, provide a bio and demographic information, or find a pretty persona picture. With this tool, it gives me everything I need to orient design objectives and communicate what we're trying to achieve from my user. So with that, I say empathy maps are great. So the next tool we can use is a job to be done canvas. If summarizing research is what I need to do as a product professional, pound for pound, the job to be done canvas communicates more of what I learned than any persona profile ever will. It tells me the customer's desired outcomes are apparent. It shows where pain is experienced in their kind of high-level journey. And we can empathize better because feelings and emotions are baked right into this template. Finally, we've got another tool that can replace our favorite persona profile, and that's that of a journey map. A journey map is like a persona profile, but on steroids. Here, it's all about building context about the user. You see the steps they take, the pains they experience, the things they like, And we know their story in a much more complete way than we ever would with a persona profile. So we have 3 useful alternatives that could just replace it completely. We have the empathy map, jobs to be done canvas, and the journey map. All right. So we have our second poll coming up now. We'll go ahead and launch that. Now that we've heard the plaintiff's case, I want to know what situations you have experienced before relative to what you heard. All right, there we go. And with that, while the answers come rolling in, I noticed there's a couple of things in chat. One of them, we have Nauman is chuckling about how often they're relating to what I am saying. So have others of you seen situations like this before? And if you have, please do put a sentence or two in chat. Share those experiences. We're interested to collaborate with each other. Feel free also, everybody, we didn't mention at the top, but please do feel free to use the Q&A option as well. If you have any questions, we'll be sure to address those as we go along. We will, unlike a real court case, you can interrupt and we can talk. Oh, Steve, thanks. He said, absolutely. I stopped using personas as defined years ago. User journeys and stories are more valuable to me. Look at that. You got some support of the evidence. All right, so I think our results are in, and in this case, we see primarily the majority of you have experienced a situation where personas were never validated. I gotta say, in my time as a product professional, that was probably the more common one as well. We made a lot of assumptions, we built personas, we were excited about personas, and then we never validated it. So it was that kind of that perpetual motion machine of assumptions that was driving a lot of the decisions that we were making as an organization. So we've got I think we have a tie for second, which is personas are missing the wire, the context, and we could have used another tool instead. I have a few of you that said other. I am interested to hear from you. What are those others? If anyone wants to put that into chat, we can talk about it. And then a small group of you said none of the above. Okay, so Anne says definitely the black hole of SharePoint. Yes. So we look at persona templates. They look great for marketing purposes, but we have a surplus and we're kind of like missing the connection, like what's happening there. Peter's given us a lot here. He's a lead designer at a consultancy firm, and they use all the tools together with personas. So it's a supplemental thing. I like that. Okay, I can see how that would work. And they are only created after the research. Ooh, and I like how you've capitalized after, an important point. So we then can have a better understanding of who the users are and how people should think about them. So all right, so we have Monique and Nahir also adding things. So thank you. Keep it coming, everybody. I'll keep an eye on that as we go along, but keep chatting with each other as I continue to present the evidence. So here's what happens now. We are ready to hear the defense.
All right, the defense.
So we have a switch. Ready? I do the Clark Kent. So now I'm Ryan D. Cantwell for the defense. So as we consider the defense's arguments, I ask the members of our jury to consider the opportunity cost of not using persona profiles at all. Think about the tool and the place it should occupy in the practice of product management and UX, of product design and marketing communications. Consider where the breakdown occurs and why things went poorly for the plaintiff's examples. So as we consider that and now look ahead to the defense, we've got some things to think about. So from the defense, Exhibit A, I want you all to take a look at this problem statement as an example. It is inefficiencies in the customer support process, slow down response time. Okay, doesn't tell me a whole lot, but I kind of have an understanding of what the problem is. And that problem, I see it, and I say it's really abstract. How am I supposed to think about this problem? Who is the who is my question. Because thinking about problems in abstract is really hard for people to do. And if they can't understand it, they can't identify where they can help, or even should help for that matter, given their domain of expertise. So how do we prevent this, everybody? I know, personas. Personas, of course. Personas give your problems a soul. They give problems a face and a name so people can connect to them. They give us a background on the specific challenges that the people we are trying to serve face and how they encounter those problems. And we can understand the result of those problems experienced, usually manifesting itself as an emotion of some kind, usually a negative one, right? And without personas, it's difficult for us to align our stakeholders and prioritize our own efforts well. So take this persona profile, for instance, for Calvin customer success. On the persona profile, there's a story. That's context. We have pain points, kind of pointing out which parts of the process does he struggle most with. And there's other details that help the product professional communicate where to focus first. The tool does this phenomenally. So I say, give your problems a soul, everybody. And we can use personas to do that. So I'm seeing a lot of chat messages come through, and I want to just touch on one of them here. I'll look at Alicia. So personas can help others on the team, especially developers, testers, etc., have someone in mind as they are working on their component of the solution. And you think they can be valuable to bring users to life in a format that's easy to digest on the team. As the defense, I couldn't agree with you more. Look at that. It's giving those people something to connect to and something that's easy to understand. So, Chris, thank you for responding to Alicia. Personas are one of many tools that have potential to have a positive impact. And if the necessary culture, right, is built there with the right frequency and communication method behind it. I love it. Supportive of the defense. Okay, let's look at Exhibit B. Exhibit B here, the persona profile, in much like what Alicia and Chris were saying, is the world's best storytelling device. They enable product managers, UX professionals, or otherwise to be more effective storytellers by summarizing the research that we collect into something stakeholders can digest. And this was alluded to in the chat earlier, but I want to make the point a little stronger now. Personas are just a summary of our research. That's all. And if they help me communicate my research well, they must be useful. So in effect, personas become our main character of the stories that we need to tell. People can connect with them. They can feel what they feel. I know I've said the word empathy a lot, but that's the whole point. They feel closer to that user, so they don't have to make it up themselves. And don't even take it from me, it's very well documented that motivating others into action requires you to stir an emotion of some kind. So people make decisions based on emotions, is what it boils down to. And it's impossible to make your audience feel everything. You can't do it all. And a persona allows us to articulate those feelings, relate them to a problem, and focus upon the important ones to tell a story that amplifies them. And that, my friends of the jury, is how product professionals win buy-in and support for our ideas, our recommendations, for the decisions that we make. And overall, the result is better product design, better marketing messages, and effective sales enablement, because they now know who to interact with, where they can help solve those problems, as we've been talking about it here. All right, so our final bit of evidence in the case of personas is that personas kind of help us make sense of these complex ecosystems of customers. They give us a way to differentiate between users and buyers and influencers and all of these people that sometimes occupy different spaces, but yet have very different needs, goals, and motivations that are important to us as we approach them with a particular product. So I have a story for all of you to underline this point. So my story here, it's a very personal one for me. I have a young daughter. She is a preteen and is starting to do more things with friends out in the world. And my wife and I thought we should probably find a way that she can communicate when she is out getting a ride to dance or going off and getting together with a friend here or there. So we looked at our options and we considered some things. So we found a watch. It's a watch that will allow us to track her location. She can text on it. She can do like phone calls a little bit with it. And she was influenced by others in this particular case, because others of her friends were using similar products. So I couldn't help, like any good product professional, think about the product manager behind these products, right? And how they have to distinguish between these different people in this chain. We've got three key components. The first one, the buyer, me, the parent. I don't use the product, but I am very much interested in what does it cost? What is it going to do? Is it going to make me feel better about allowing my daughter to go off with a friend and do something fun? We have a user in this particular case, my daughter. She's going to be the one wearing the watch. And she wants it to do different things than I do. She wants to be able to text her friends. Does it have all the emojis? Can she record a silly video and take a picture with it so she can share it with others in her network? Me, the buyer, I'm interested about her safety. Like, can I lock out who she can communicate with or who she can't communicate with? And then a key influencer here, and in fact, there's different types, are her friends. Can I communicate with them? Clara, you should get this watch or this thing to communicate with me. Where me as a parent, I'm asking other parents, what did you do? What do you recommend? What's your experience been like? They're all influencing the decisions that we make. And without personas, this product manager, good grief, how on earth could they do their job? They can't understand how who are they designing for? Is it this one or that one? Who do they sell to, the user or the buyer? Or do they try to push on the influencer to drive decision-making? What's happening here? And personas are the perfect way to do that. And that little scenario from my personal life is broadly applicable to business. Yes, sometimes in a B2C world, I guess in other worlds too, We have buyers and users that occupy the same persona. That's okay. In other contexts, they are very different individuals. I know B2B in particular, users and buyers are often very different. And like, imagine in a B2B context, what if we were a software company that serves hospitals by managing patient with an application that manages patient records, sharing key details with doctors and nurses about a patient and some of the services that they've needed or treatments that they've needed in the past. Maybe the buyers are the hospital administrative staff. Maybe the users are the doctors and the nurses and are interfacing with the software. But an influencer in this case could be the IT team at the hospital. They got to maintain all of this stuff. So that product manager would need to be very aware of what is happening there. And personas do the job. They tell me who are the users, who are the buyers, who are the influencers. These are their needs, goals, and motivations, and this is how we should talk to them. So personas give you the necessary clarity so you can design and communicate appropriately. Without them, we have a harder time understanding and describing these relationships and why they are important. They do a lot for us in this particular regard. All right, and now that we've heard from the defense, I can go back to my normal self, and we will open our final poll for the day. Oh, no, I shouldn't say that. We have one more poll where you have to render your verdict coming up. This is a poll, not a judgment or a verdict vote. So let's do it. I want to hear from all of you. Which is the strongest counter argument to the question, are personas dead? Which one do you agree with or maybe not agree with? Feel free to add some thoughts or opinions into chat as well. Oh, interesting. Okay. I'll share in a moment, but so I'm happy to see I have a fair number of you saying it's all of them that are good counter arguments. And even a few of you have said none of these are strong enough arguments for me to support. So we have some opinions. That's what we want. Good. I want those opinions. All right. We'll maybe give you about 20 seconds, everybody. Get your votes in. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
All right, Judge, what do you think of the arguments from both sides of the trial?
I don't know. I'm kind of leaning with the jury here that it's not the persona's fault. It's a tool that seems to be often misused. We had quite a few folks seem to agree.
I know, yeah, it's definitely a majority when it comes to that response that we see. It's not the persona's fault, it's how they're used. That's the problem. You might be onto something here, I think, our Judge Brooks. All right, so look at that. So we've got some good responses. Now, let us talk about our verdict. We'll do some quick closing arguments and then have you all say your piece as you vote for which side of the trial you fall upon. Oh, we just got something pop up in chat. We have Glenn. Thanks, Glenn. So based on the evidence presented, it feels like personas can be used as a summary of all the research findings and used when there's a need to convince higher level executives who might be more removed from day-to-day product development. That is true. It's a good point. I think it is a good tool to help us manage up as product professionals with our leadership teams. it can also be used, I think it was Alicia that may have said earlier, with across the organization, maybe developers or salespeople, marketing people as well. So it can be broadly applicable. But Glenn, as you bring up, great use case. All right. So we've got a closing argument from both sides. Quickly, I'm not going to flip my background or put my glasses back on, but we will do it this way. Our plaintiff in this case has said, or given the accusation that Persona, the tool, is dead. And the evidence that they presented, or he presented, I'm speaking of myself in third person now, that is missing context, and we open the door to judgment. They can be very easily misused, in fact, and the misuse comes from not just the creation of them, but also they're never rarely validated, which you all kind of voted as the common misstep that you see, as well as their use, they kind of fall by the wayside. So we stick them in the black hole of SharePoint or on a shelf somewhere, and they collect dust. So finally, from the plaintiff's perspective, they can be easily replaced with other tools. At best, maybe they are a supplemental thing, but other things can do the same thing, just better. The defense, on the other hand, they say personas are alive and well because they're helping us tell a story. They're bringing focus to that user, and it's giving us a means to communicate the problems that we see our users face and not make that problem abstract. We don't want to make it hard to understand. We want to make it relatable and accessible, and personas can give us that if we use them well. That storytelling device then makes us better product people. We can now sell our ideas, win support, and make sure our decisions people agree with, because they know, okay, they've done their research, and this is what the user, buyer, or influencer in fact needs. And speaking of users, buyers, and influencers, personas can help us simplify those connections that exist between these different profiles, and they make our lives easier in that way. So now, is everybody ready? We need to issue a sentence for our personas, hearing both sides of the case. So we will open our poll. This is your time, jury, to deliberate. So now, answer the question at hand. Are personas dead?
Jury, issue your verdict after you deliberate.
Okay, we've got some interesting stuff coming in, or interesting responses coming in. I like this. All right, and as we wrap this up, everybody, I'll take this opportunity now to say, please do, if you have any questions about personas and their use, anything you've heard here today, you say, wait a minute, what about this, or what about that? Maybe something you didn't hear. Please do put that into the Q&A, and we can address that just after we close out, and we'll do a short Q&A session to wrap up. All right, here we go. Let's close this out and share the results. And the majority of you say, no, personas are alive and well. Some of you did say dead and gone. So this is really interesting. So we've got a majority saying no, they're alive and well. The defense perhaps was a little bit stronger as we look at it. And maybe you kept in mind that it was the tool of personas that were on trial, not exactly the use of them. So why are we calling personas poor, the tool, when they're so often misused in a lot of particular instances? So Really interesting stuff, everybody. I appreciate the participation. So thank you. Your responsibilities as the jury in the courtroom of product management are hereby complete. Your responsibilities have been fulfilled, but we are not quite done in our webinar. For that matter, I want to quickly close out and just issue my opinion now as the consultant and trainer from the 280 group, and having an opportunity to interact with a lot of product managers all over the world. I say personas aren't dead. In fact, I think they're alive and well, much like all of you have rendered that verdict. But the way we use them needs to die a horrible death, because they are often misused. They're rarely validated. They're maybe not used at all. And we treat them, I mean, this is a theme from the 280 group, Robin, you're going to love this. We treat them with an output mindset rather than an outcome mindset. We treat it from the perspective of somebody said, build a persona. I will build the persona. Do the work, check the box. That's an output. Instead of asking, why do we need personas? What can they do for us? And approaching it that way, it's a very small nuance, but approaching it that way, you will notice the other stuff gets easier. Going and validating them, we understand, well, if we want to fulfill this why, we have to validate them. We need good information and not just to base it on assumptions. And using them becomes easier because it's easier to sell others in the organization on why it's important to use the persona in the first place, because it's going to do this for us. So we want to focus on that outcome from the very beginning, from the get-go. So the way we use personas needs to die. So we're going to use them, but everybody, make sure you don't introduce judgment, give them context. We want to cut the fluff. Make sure what we put on our profile is important and relevant to our project. Keep it simple. And always, always, always validate them. If we only use assumptions, we're never developing anything that's inspired, or we're never going to send a marketing message that resonates with anyone. That's where we see underperformance happen. And so don't blame personas if we see that happening. We got to do our research. And because remember, personas, a way to summarize our research. That's what Glenn kind of alluded to in his prior comment. That's all they are. They're a communication tool. Let them work for you, not against you. And finally, we got to use them. If we're going to take the time to do the research and create some nice personas, our stakeholders need more than a SharePoint file to go find them. It is your responsibility, product professionals, to grow their use and influence within your organizations. Just a few quick tips from me. I found it useful. I worked with a development team once where they would start every meeting for a project by reviewing a persona profile quickly. Every single one. You need a reminder, this is who we're serving, and off they go. And sometimes a product manager like me, I'd have to go interject myself occasionally. Hey, I just want to go talk about these things. Maybe add some new learning, because we want to make our personas iterative too. They shouldn't go stale ever. Like, we create them once, and if we don't stay current with them and ask, is what we believe to be true still true today, and then let others know what we're learning, they're not as useful. So let's make them useful and do those things. So lots of good reasons to use personas here. Use the right behaviors that sit behind the persona to make them as useful as possible. Make them work for you, like I said. So, Stephen, I like what you're saying in chat. It takes rigor in the product organization to ensure personas are completed and kept updated. I could not agree more. Rigor and discipline is needed. That sounds very harsh. We're, I guess, coming out of a courtroom mindset. I'm feeling that way. But yeah, stakeholders definitely need, not only do they need access to them, but they need advocated for. And it's our voice that advocates. And then people not only will use them, but understand why they're important. So Nicole, you're saying, are the other persona tools, journey map, jobs to be done canvas included in the 280 group product lifecycle toolkit? What a wonderful question. So
that seems like a great opportunity for me to chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, Robin, go ahead.
All right. So we actually created a brand new tool called the 280 Group Playbook. This is a completely updated and revised version of or similar product to our old product management lifecycle toolkit. Both are relevant. These just have been updated very recently to align with the updates that we've made to our optimal product management course and our new product process called the 280 Group Blueprint. All of these tools are included in the playbook, and we do have a special offer today to get 3 of those templates that are very relevant to this conversation. So you will get a persona template, and it's not just the template, we actually include some context, right? Just like Ryan was talking about, how you should use them, how you should validate them. And then we include a couple of other templates. Empathy interviews, which is a great way to validate your personas and empathize with them, and an affinity mapping exercise where you take that information and you start to group it. And so you can start to see trends, different types of people who you might have thought were all included in one proto persona, right? Which is what we call them before we validate them, could actually have different opinions and actions and thoughts than what you were thinking about. So these 3 templates are a great way to get started with personas if you feel like you haven't been giving them enough care and attention, and also take a look at the full playbook for additional templates like that Ryan mentioned, like jobs to be done and customer journey mapping. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. I appreciate it. So Nicole, just to summarize what Robin said, the product lifecycle toolkit is now called the playbook. We've got all the playbook templates. So if you're interested, yes, there are templates in there, not only for personas, but for jobs to be done, for empathy mapping, and some of those other things that I talked about are definitely included there. And they all do work with each other. I forget who it was that mentioned it earlier. But personas shouldn't be a standalone device. I mean, we have a lot of ammunition or tools in our toolbox. Let me put it that way. Tools in our toolbox as product professionals. And it's always best to understand which tool do I use in a certain situation, because sometimes personas might not be the best tool. Like maybe we're doing something smaller or lighter weight, and an empathy map might be great. So maybe I just use that. I don't have to go create the persona. So you understand the tools and use the playbook to help guide you into which one might be best given your particular situation. So it's pretty cool. All right. So Robin, we've got one more order of business before we close. And then
all right. Thank you, Ryan. For those of you interested in hearing a lot more about personas and other product management processes, our optimal product management course, which I mentioned, has been fully updated and refreshed this year with the most current context and best practices for product managers and product teams. You'll have the opportunity to take this course with our lovely host Ryan here in December, if you would like. We also have upcoming dates in November as well, both live online and live in person, whichever suits your needs the best. So please come join us, and we'd love to talk more about personas and other best practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, everybody, you can keep this conversation going on the 280 Group's LinkedIn feed. So please do join up with us, follow us, start
Absolutely.
a conversation. We'd love to engage with you there and answer any other questions you might have. So thank you for your engagement today. I love seeing all the chat messages. You were a wonderful jury, everybody. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your days. And we'll see you next time at the next 280 Group webinar.
Thanks, everyone.